Oh, it is.
Welcome to Living Well. I'm so happy that you joined us for another segment of Living Well to learn how to live well, not only on this life, but for the life to come. So, today is a topic that many people really don't like talking about, and that is grief. Many people like to hide their grief and hide their feelings, but today we want to open that up and say it's okay to talk about grief. And it's important that you do talk about it because that can help you through the grieving process. So, Emily and I will have a conversation about grief, but we do want to invite you to also participate. I do know that many of us have had some experience with grief in our life, whether we wanted to or not, whether it's a family member, a co-worker. As you can tell on the news this week, we've heard so many stories about losses in the news. When we think about even those individuals in Texas who were faced with that flood unexpectedly, lost their lives, all of us are actually affected by grief, whether it is directly or indirectly. So, we really want to talk about this topic, not only about grief, but how to cope with it, because sometimes it's the coping part that we really struggle with. And so, when you look at this person standing here, sometimes it feels like you're going through the grief process by yourself. There's a verse in Matthew 5:4 that says, "Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted." And that is a promise from God. And so, what we're hoping is that from this conversation today, two things that we will talk about how to alleviate emotional distress. Grief is normal, it's expected, people should, but how do you alleviate that emotional distress that goes on and on and on? And then foster our long term well being, psychologically as well as spiritually. So, those are the two desired outcomes from our conversation today. So we're going to talk about definition of grief, understanding grief, not that we're experts. In fact, I will pause to say this is for educational purposes only. Emily and I do not assess, diagnose, or treat any conditions. If there's something going on with you, we would encourage you to consult your physician. But we're also going to talk about navigating and coping with grief, supporting others during the grieving process. What are the spiritual and religious dimensions that go along with grief? And then when should you seek professional help? And then we'll summarize it. But throughout, feel free to write in the chat, feel free to open your mic. This is an open discussion. And this really conversation came about as I was watching the news this week. I kept hearing about losses and people that are being affected by losses. And even when I think back on the losses that I've had in my own family, I thought, ooh, that's a topic that we probably need to talk a little bit about to help us better understand it and navigate through it. So we know that grief is an emotional response to loss, and there's so many different types of loss. So we're not only talking about death today, but people lose their health. They may become debilitated. They may be in an accident and lose their job. Sometimes people lose relationships. It could be through divorce, or maybe just children who said, "I'm not going to talk to my parents anymore," or parents say, "I'm not going to talk to my children anymore." Sometimes it's because of identity. Sometimes people have been up the corporate ladder, and then when they have to come down and work in other areas, they experience grief. So today, our topic about grief is pretty broad, but it should be relevant to everybody that's online today. So there's many types of griefs. There's normal response to loss that we talked about, and then there's anticipatory grief. You may know of someone who has been sick for a long, long, long time, and people knew that at some point they would die. But even when they die, you're going to experience grief. That's not anything. And sometimes we talked about jobs, even divorce, starting a life without that spouse is a grief. Sometimes people go through that grief. Traumatic accidents or homicides. And this is one that people don't talk about, the disenfranchised grief. This is if you lose a pet, or if someone has a miscarriage, or if, infertility. People can experience grief in those situations. They really can. And so it's important that we realize that um, if we are experiencing any of those, people, it is their loss, and we should be sensitive to that. I remember when I lost my pet, both of them. I was out of town both times my pets passed away, and I felt really bad that I was not there to help them through through their illness, their emergency. But again, it is still a loss. You may know people who've gone through cumulative losses. What that means is they've lost people within a short period of time. Maybe they lost a friend. Maybe they lost a mother. Maybe they lost a father within a short period of time, and they just keep lost year after year after year after year after year. I know for me, our parents passed away 6 months apart. And so that was an cumulative losses for our family. Um, Community losses, disasters, wars, school shootings. Sometimes there's delayed grief. I don't know, but sometimes people won't grieve in the moment. They won't grieve when it happens, but their delayed grief may come months later. So again, it could be a year later, it could be 2 years later, it could be 3 years later, but it still occurs. And then there's the complicated grief that occurs that lasts more than 12 months. And when we get to complicated grief, that's when it becomes very concerning, especially if they're overly emotional and not able to get through it. Um, that's when it's maybe a good idea to seek out counseling. Any thoughts? All
Yeah.
right.
Um, I like what you said that, grief is normal. Some people think that grief is something that is something bad to experience and they should not experience grief, but it is normal. And not also is it normal, it is also very personal because
Mhm,
everybody experiences grief differently.
mhm,
And so it's okay to experience grief. And it's something normal. It's an expression of emotions, that a deep emotion that you feel. And God created us with emotions. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about different incidents in the Bible where grief was expressed. When Joseph, no,
mm,
and Jacob, I should say, heard about his son that, when the brothers went back to the father telling him that a wild animal killed Joseph. The father was in such grief. He tore his garment. He went into mourning. He did not even want to be comforted.
mhm,
He just wanted to be left alone. As a matter of fact, he he wanted to die himself. He
mhm,
wanted to just go, die also. So we just need to understand and accept individuals as they grieve and just be there for them to support them. That's, you know, that's the role that we need to play most of the time instead of trying to help. When I say help, instead of trying to tell them, oh, don't grieve, you shouldn't cry, and all of that. Those are not good things to tell someone when they're grieving. You need to let them go through the grieving stages.
Very good, Emily. And
Well, we know that God,
go ahead, Lee.
yes. So I said, well, we know that God says that there's an appointed time and then we
Mhm,
all are going to die.
mhm,
So even though some people find it hard to accept, but I feel that since we all have will experience loss, that we should all have a grief class because you need to know what not to say to people.
mhm,
Like people who experience the loss, they ask how many children you have. Well, I had two girls. Well, you still have another girl. Or like you have a miscarriage and this is not a problem, you could have another
mhm,
child. So we need to know what not to say to people when they have these losses. Or even as in the loss of a pet,
mhm,
you think, well, that's not a person. Why, people are very close to their pets.
mhm,
I
mhm.
remember we had two pets and they died in a fire and it was awful.
Mm.
Yeah. So, I think that everybody should have this class or some grief class so that they know how to respond to people when they say they have a loss. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you so much for sharing that. Stan and Yvette, I see your hand.
Yeah, so one of the things that comes to mind about grief is Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord, lean not on thy own understanding, but acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he will direct thy paths. So
Mhm.
that's one thing comes to my mind when I think about grief. So lean on the Lord,
Yes,
and he'll direct that path.
Yes.
absolutely. There's a verse that talks about how believers should not grieve as others with no hope. So again, knowing the scripture, thank you for bringing that forward, Lee and Stan. Knowing the scriptures can help us during difficult times. So we know, thank you, Emily, that grief is personal. It's different for everybody. Some people can grieve for a short time. We can't say how long you should grieve, even if your loss is similar to someone else's. It's really a natural part of life, and it should not be endured alone. Do not grieve in silence. Many times people don't think you want to hear their story, so they just keep it to themselves. But one of the therapeutic ways to get through grief is actually to talk about the loved one, the memories, the positive things that you remember. And we shouldn't try to fix someone's problem. It is not a problem that someone grieves. It is a normal process. It's part of the healing process, even going through grief. And then one thing that I wanted to be loud and clear is God is present in our grief. He knew before that person passed away that they would pass away, when they would pass away. Um, and so it's important that we put our trust in God. As Stan said, lean not to our own understanding. We may not even understand why it happened, how it happened, but we know that God is with us. So things that can happen. People can be very sad. They can get angry. They can feel guilty. They can even feel numb. I've heard people say, I feel numb right now. I can't even process what just happened to me. I did not expect this to happen. This is so unexpected. And so sometimes they're numb until they go through the process of actually going through the burial. I remember I was at a funeral years ago, and they were doing the view. It was right before the funeral, so they had the viewing ahead of time. And I walked up, and the wife was at the casket, and she said, "He really is dead." That was her out of her mouth. And so, even though they had the funeral, let's say a week later after the passing, seeing that person really became a reality to them. And so, sometimes people experience physical things, maybe have difficulty sleeping, their appetites may change, they may not want to eat for days. And I would encourage, when they feel like that, try to give them foods that are easy to digest, fruits and vegetables, things that are easy to take in, not the sugar and the salty and the fried. All of those things can add to a lot of stress and strain on the body. Um, there are times that people, when they have grief, they may withdraw. They may not want people to come around. They may not want visitors. And if you do visit, make your visit short and sweet, because many times families don't get rest during those times of grief. And it's not only with death, it could be with anything, whether there's a divorce or a loss of job or anything. It could be that they just need some time to rest. Um, and then spiritual. Sometimes people ask why. Why did I lose my job? Why did I get divorced? Why did I lose that child? All those questions. Why did that happen to the children in Texas? Why? You know, and so again, those are things that we can expect to happen when people are going through navigating the grief and trying to figure out how to cope with the things that are happening. Um, so again, it's important that we are very open-minded, compassionate, sensitive to that. So there are 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. You may go in order, you may not go in order. They can actually start anywhere when you hear the news that you've lost a loved one. And what I've found is sometimes our spirituality will determine our stages of grief, how long we stay in that stage. Our culturally, sometimes people mourn and grieve for months. Some cultures will wear black for a whole month. That's all the color they'll wear for the entire month. And that is a signal that they are grieving or mourning the loss of a loved one. Whatever that is, we should be respectful of how people grieve. We shouldn't try to rush them through the process. And the process may last, denial and anger and depression, the different stages may last at different time periods, time frames. And acceptance, even though we say we accept it, it doesn't mean that a person will not grieve. Um, what I have learned through research is sometimes when we go through the grieving process, it helps us grow personally, and it actually can help us grow spiritually as well, um, just because we're in that process. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I remember when my father passed away, and I was basically in denial because my father was one day he was strong, walking about, he was fine, and then all of a sudden, you know, he was in bed, couldn't get out, and then he passed away. And I was trying to figure out, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? What more could I have done? And I was going through that for weeks. I was going through that, that why. What could I have done? And I had to go through that in order for me to eventually come to the reality and realizing that, you know, this is what my father wanted too. Because after my mom passed away, he just did not want basically to live anymore. He wanted to just rest, go to sleep, because he just felt so totally lost without her. But I wanted to keep him around. I did not want him to go. And so it was a little selfish on my part, because I was trying to, get him to eat and get him to do all the things I think he needs to do so he can stay alive. So I'm saying this to say, the person who, maybe that loved one that is sick or dying, we just need to support them, help them through the process of dying. And I think when we do that, that eventually might help us accept the fact of that person's death, because death, grief is very painful. And sometimes it could be a gift. Might seem oxymoron, that grief is a gift. But when you grieving, you have that. I wrote something down. God gave us the gift of pain so that we can react when something goes wrong. Because if we do not react, if we do not have that reaction, then what will happen? Ever since mankind left the perfection of paradise, they strayed away from God's will, our bodies, experience these different emotions. So these emotions, we have it so that we can heal. It's a gift for healing. So we need to embrace it and go through these different phases of grief, understand it, accept it, and go through these grieving phases. And when we have friends and family that are grieving, what we need to be to them is support. Just
Amen.
be there to listen. We don't have to say a thing. Just be there, hold their hands, be supportive, help them with whatever way we can. Um, don't try to tell them, oh, it's time to stop grieving. You shouldn't be grieving for so long. It's been a year now. Why are you still grieving? You will miss that person forever. You will miss that person. But there are different stages in your life where, as the years go by, you are at different levels. Because right now, I can look back and I can look at what my father, things that my father did, and smile about it, laugh about it, and have that peace, and to accept that, he wanted to go. This is what he wanted, and I just accept it, and I can have that peace within myself that, he's resting in the arms of God. And that is so very important, to know that your loved one is resting in the arms of God.
Amen. Miss Lee?
Yes, I'd just like to add to what Emilyn talked about in terms of, well, and you as well, that you will go through different stages at different times. And that there's no set time, that no length of time, like over a year, for someone to say, well, you're still grieving, why? But I was in that depression stage, because after I had my losses, I actually had to seek professional help, because I was deep, deep, deep in loss, and it was not good. So first, Spike, my husband, took me to the church. They had the grief share, and I was able to go through that, but I still needed additional help. So I did seek other help, and I was able to come out. And then they asked me to be a facilitator. So now I facilitate, and I try to help other people with their grief. So
Amen. Awesome. I love what you said. And one thing I'm going to back up what Emilyn said, grief is a gift. I thought, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. And then I like what Miss Lee said, is as she worked through her grief, Now she's helping others. And that's really what this conversation is about, sharing so that we can not only get through it, but we can help others cope as well. Thank you for sharing that. So, navigating through grief, make sure it's healthy. Writing is good. Actually, journaling is good. If you like to write, and nowadays we have these phones, you can even record your emotions or whatever. If you do art, talking with others, making sure that you eat and exercise and sleep, and even take time out for yourself. Sometimes we get so busy during grief, and I noticed that happened with me. We're trying to stay busy because we don't want to have to think about what there's grieving and there's hurt and addressing the pain and all of that. But honestly, that can cause exhaustion. You really do need to take time out for yourself and set some boundaries, because sometimes we're saying yes, 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 and really we should be no, I need to rest. But and be open to accepting any help, but make sure it's healthy, because unhealthy coping strategies can lead to isolation. If you're finding yourself by yourself because you don't want to be around anybody, or starting to use substances, whether it's alcohol or tobacco or drugs, to kind of smother the pain and hopefully it will go away, that won't happen. And even denying that, saying that, oh, they're going to come back, or things are going to happen. You don't want to be in that space and place. And as Ms. Lee said, you have to recognize when you do need to stretch out to a support group, stretch out to other professional support. That's really important. And even people can have suicidal thoughts. They think, oh, if so and so died, I want to die. I had a friend of mine whose son actually did commit suicide, and within the same week, the husband committed suicide because he couldn't deal
Oh,
with grief. And so it's important to recognize these signs in other people. If they have isolation, if they're doing substances, recognize it so that they too do not end up losing their life because they were unable to cope with the grief of a loved one. You can make grief meaningful, showing pictures, telling stories, having memorials. In my house, in the wall, I have a picture of a wall with my parents on it. Just, and not that I will ever forget them, but I have their pictures there. So that just reminds me of the wonderful people that they were and how they shaped my lives. Um, Faith practices, acts of service, getting out, helping others around the time of people's um, like passing, the memorial or the anniversary. That's when a lot of times people have a very, very difficult time when a birthday is coming up or an anniversary or something of that nature. It can be really difficult. And so try to pre-plan, if you will, pre-plan what you're gonna do, something positive, so that you can help make it through that difficult time. Supporting others. This is what we really want to talk about. Support. And Emilyn has been saying that loud and clear. They are crucial. It is very important because it helps with the healing process. You want to encourage, you want to give emotional validation. If they say they're upset, support them. Do not try to change their mind about how they're feeling about it, because only they know how they're feeling. Do practical help. May I fix you a meal? Let me take you to the store. Let me go with you to your doctor's appointment, because sometimes you don't even have the energy in your body when you're going through grief to do some of those simple tasks. Let me help you around the house. What can I do to help you? And offer support in that way. We know that support systems may not take away the pain, but just knowing someone's walking with you through the grieving process is important. If you know someone is by themselves, let's say a wife or a husband, offer to go to the funeral home with them if you must, to go with them to make plans for the services, especially if they have no children or no one is nearby or around, be there for them. And then also, when they're having community rituals or collective mourning, you'll notice sometimes on the news, people will gather um, in a single place. They may not have known the person, but they will go to show the support for the family, for the community. All of those things are very important. So let's talk about what you say and don't say. Thank you, Miss Lee. I'm going to have you come back on for sure. Sometimes silence is golden. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to have any answers. You don't have to do anything, but you can listen compassionately. I'm here for you. Like I said, offering practical help. What can I do? But there's some things that you should not say. How did you lose your job? Why did he leave you? Divorce you? How did she die? How did he die? Don't ask those kind of questions. because those are painful questions. You know, don't say everything happens for a reason. Maybe it wasn't a good spouse. Maybe they were abusive, but don't say it because maybe for them, they are still dealing with that. Um, at least they're not suffering anymore. At least you're not going through that anymore. Those are not kind things to say to someone who is grieving because it's a loss for them. If someone dies, don't say he or she is in a better place. We know this world is wicked as it can be, you know, but that is not a statement that you want to say. If a family member says it to you, that's them saying it. But for you offering that ill advice or ill comment, it is not what you want to do because right now all they're doing is thinking about how am I going to pay the bills? I'm going to miss this person. What am I going to do? Any thoughts about what other support we can provide to someone who's grieving?
Yeah, I like the fact you said to offer practical help because what is practical help? Because many times, and we say it without maybe thinking about it, you know, call me if you need, if you need any help. Let me know if you need any help. And as you said, these individuals they don't even have the strength to even pick up the phone to call. So instead of saying that, what we can say is, you know, maybe I am going to the grocery. I'm going to the grocery. What can I get you? If whatever you're going to say to them is should be something that is direct, not you
Right.
know something that's not direct, where they will have to think about it too much. Just let them know that you're here to help them and you going to give them your help. Show them that I'm here. I can wash clothes for you. I can do the laundry for you. I can clean the house for you. Give them practical help. Say to them that what you are going to do, not what you want me to do for you, because
Right.
they don't have the strength even and even to think about what is there to be done. You can look around, you can see things to be done and just do it for them. Especially if you're a close friend, family member, they wouldn't feel offended by it. So just go ahead and just do that. And these platitudes that we give people, as you were saying about, they're in a better place, it's just best for us to sit and just be quiet sometimes. We don't even need to say anything. And that would be so much helpful to these individuals.
Mhm.
I have something else.
Go ahead.
Perhaps just saying, can I come over and sit with you for a few minutes? Or maybe if they want to leave the house, maybe go to a park and sit. Something quiet where they get a chance to just share the burdens on their heart. Because sometimes they want to talk, but they're afraid to because of what people have said or will say. And
Mhm.
sometimes just being there, even to just sit quietly with them, might make a difference.
Man, getting them out of the house, getting them out of the environment where they maybe that's where the loved one lived or wherever. But that's a very good advice. Just changing the environment. Larry, I see your hand.
Yes, ma'am. I can't see anything, but I can hear y'all well. But for me, and this actually happened for me, is somebody was there and they didn't have to say anything. They just showed me that their support was there. So that if I did need to talk, or if I did feel like I wanted to confide in them or unburden myself, I could. But just showing your presence a lot of times means more to people than we could ever know.
Amen. And
Wonderful. Yeah.
one
Be,
thing I would add on there about,
be
about
present and supportive.
presence and support. But I would say another thing to not say, do not bring up derogatory stories or comments about the person, whether it was a ex-husband or a loss, a death of a spouse or anything. Don't say things, oh, I remember when, you know, keep those stories to yourself. They don't want to hear about it when they're going through that grieving and loss. They really don't. So, don't bring up those stories that you remember that are not favorable. Leave those unsaid. All right. So let's talk about spiritual and religious dimensions of grief. We know that we've talked about the Bible, how it refers to that. We know that we are going to die, but it is painful when it does happen to us, even though we know that we're going to die. But when you have a spiritual connection with God, it does, that it does offer you the presence of his presence, his love. And then we talked about practical helps, but it does ease the burden when you have a religious connection. I was reading a research article that says when you have a connection with God, it does buffer the pain, it does buffer the loss. It doesn't take away the pain, but it does help you transition through the different stages of grief a little faster, a little easier as a result of it. And then another article talked about bereavement can trigger spiritual changes. I don't know about you, but sometimes when you're at a funeral, all you can think about is not only supporting the family, but thinking about our own, not our own death, but knowing that everybody has to pass that way at some point, and it does help you reevaluate your beliefs about life and death. Sometimes when I go to a funeral, it lets me know that life is so short that whatever I'm going to do it with joy and gladness, do it wholeheartedly into the Lord, because you just don't know the day nor the hour, right? So I was watching the news about a lady who was in the hospital, and she and her fiance, they were supposed to get married in October. They were walking across a crosswalk. He saw the car coming. He pushed her so hard, she said, she didn't know why he pushed her, but he pushed her out of the way of the car. In turn, the car hit him. He passed away. And she was saying how that was just like true sheer love, that someone was protecting her so much that they gave their life up for her, and so when we do hear things like that, you realize how life is uncertain. It's just a step away. The Bible even talks about life, death is just a step away. And so that makes you want to live your best life. Live it with joy and gladness, giving, doing all that God has called you to do, not putting off for tomorrow where that, to do this or to do that, but really living a godly, good, righteous life every day, because we just don't know the day nor the hour. And then it also helps strengthen our religious and spiritual beliefs when we associate, it is associated with better emotional regulation. This is the study during grief, particularly in situations of mild to moderate complicated grief. There's some deaths we will never understand that have happened in our families, that have happened at our job, that have happened around us. And so when we have those spiritual and religious beliefs in God, it can help with regulating our emotions. And as Miss Lee talked about the grief share, thank you for sharing that, Miss Lee, because we do sometimes need a support group. And at church or in the community, seek those out because they can really help you. Would you like to add anything, Miss Lee, about the grief support group? I know you have one at your church.
Yes, we have one at our group, and we have it every year, and it's a 13-week session. It's for 2 hours on Mondays for the 13 week. It ends in July, but we would have it. We have other programs too, like loss of a spouse, and then we have navigating through the holidays. So if you go on griefshare.com, you could find a grief share near you. You're certainly welcome to come to ours, but it is on there so that you could manage your grief.
Is it on
Thank
Zoom
you.
in person?
You could have it either way, but ours is on Zoom.
Okay. So it makes it
Okay.
convenient. You can do it right from your home.
Exactly. Yes.
Lee, I
Yes.
don't know if you have that number, but if you can put it in the chat, can you do that for us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Perfect.
That's
Perfect.
good. Yeah.
Let's talk about some Bible verses. Before I go on, Emilyn, anything else you had wanted to share about grief?
Um, yeah, well, I think you covered almost everything that I was going to talk about. Yeah, there's different stages of grief. People go through it, and as you said, it's different from individuals. And just be there to support. The main thing we just have to support our loved ones. And if we ourselves are going through, grief, sometimes we might not have support from other folks. So what do we do? how do we, if you're going through grief or bereavement and there's no one around to support you, then we have to look to God. That's the only source. He's the only help that we can look to for our strength, for encouragement. Just look through the Bible, because in the Bible there's so many different stories showing where individuals, grieved. I think about Jesus himself when he was on earth. He had so many different emotions when he saw people, sick, the lame. He has this emotion. He was saddened for them when people were going through. Even when his good friend Lazarus died, he wept. So even Jesus, when he was on earth, went through these different emotions. So it's something that is okay, and we just need to support each other, as I said. Or if you don't have support, look for someone like a group that Lee's talking about. You can look for groups like that, and also turn to him, because he said there's no sorrow that he does not know about, and there's no grief that he cannot help with.
Amen. Amen. Years ago, I worked with a physician, and he was saying how in his culture, number one, they do not put their loved ones on life support and different things. They allow the dying process to just take it naturally. Um, and he talked about the respect and care that they give to, the deceased, because they know that it is still a body and it is still a life. And it's not a life, but it is we're made in the image of God. So they give it such respect. So I would say that, when people are grieving, when they're going through a loss, continue to talk about that person with respect, even though they may be deceased. So the Bible talks about in Matthew 5:4, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. This is really emphasizing our divine provision for those who experience sorrow. And I appreciate you, Emma, talking about those Jesus in the Bible with Lazarus, Joseph, I'm sorry, Jacob. So again, God is with us. Psalms 34:18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are a crushed spirit. And this reminds us that God is near during our most painful moments. Revelations 21:4, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. I love this. There will be no more death, no more mourning, nor pain, nor crying, for the old order of things are passed away. And this knows that in the future there will be no death, there will be no dying, there will be no sorrow, there will be no mourning. And in 2 Corinthians 1:3-4, praise be to the God of fathers of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our troubles. And this lets us know that God is ready to support us in any situation we're in, whether it's death, divorce, loss of job, loss of any type, loss of pet. He's there to support us. And then John 14:27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. So God can, in our grief, give us peace. So peace in grief is possible. Comfort in grief is possible. All when we put our trust in God, knowing that He will never, ever leave us nor forsake us. So when do you want to seek professional help?
Amen.
This persistent depression or anxiety, absolutely, you must seek help. There will be times that it will come back to your remembrance of your loved one. As Emilyn said, she thinks about her father, she smiles, she remembers things. And I do the same with my parents. But when you're in a state of depression or anxiety, it is time to seek help. When you're unable to function, you don't feel like getting out of bed, don't feel like going to work, don't feel like going to church, don't feel like doing anything, you're literally depressed. You want to make sure that you seek out professional help. And also, if you have thoughts of self harm, you must get professional help. Friends won't help, they can sit and listen, but they need to lead you to a counselor, a therapist, or a pastor, or someone to get the help that you need. And you will be so much more relieved and able to cope with the stressors of a loss. Let's summarize it. Grief is part of a life. It's part of life, and it does hurt. We know it hurts, and we hurt when we go through it. Um, Everyone will grieve differently based on our culture, our spirituality, our past experiences. They also play a role in grieving and coping. As I mentioned, my parents died 6 months apart. They were totally different griefs that we experienced. But again, since we had been through it already before, the planning stages of the funeral were a little easier because now we had an experience. So that helped us on with my father's passing. But again, because of the relationship that I have with my mother and with my father, the grieving certainly occurred for both of them because it was truly a loss to lose them. God is in every stage of the grieving process, through the anger, through the denial. He's big enough, he can handle all of that. He's in all of the 5 stages of grieving. He is there. He's there. And then choose healthy coping strategies. Let your faith guide you through that. When we talk about navigating, through grief, or it is really your faith in God that is going to take you through it. Supportive family, taking time to exercise and eat right. All of those can help you through the grieving process. And then knowing that you can and should seek professional help when indicated. I think that's going to have. All right. Any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple more scriptures,
Mm-hmm.
passages that I came across. Isaiah 41:10. So do not worry because I am with you. Do not be afraid because I am your God. I will make you strong and help you. God is there to support us. I will support you with my right hand that
Amen.
saves you. And Psalms 46:10, be still and know that I am God. I would be praised in all nations. I would praise throughout the earth. And this one really touched me. Isaiah 46:15, when it says, can a woman forget the babe she
Mm-hmm.
nursed? Can she feel no kindness for the child to which she gave birth? Even if she could forget her children,
Mm-hmm.
I will not forget you. My
Mm-hmm.
goodness, that was so powerful. Just let us know that God will never forget us. No, even if we turn our backs on him,
Mm-hmm.
even if when we are grieving, we are mad with him and we get upset with him and we blame him for everything, he's still there patiently, calm, just waiting for us to say, oh, come back to him. He is there. He would never
I
always
love
forget.
that. Emma, thanks for sharing those verses. And one thing I would say is we're talking about grieving. For a while, I wouldn't go to funerals. Even if I knew the person, I'm like, I'm not going because I felt like people missed the opportunity while they were living, even myself, to tell them how wonderful they are and what they meant to me. And so then, of course, I started going to funerals again. But I have learned from just that take time to tell people that you love them, you care for them, you appreciate them, because sometimes the people who are having the deepest seat of grief is because of they failed to do something they believe, to the person, or before they passed away. So they won't have another opportunity. So I would say that, in the world in which we live, begin to say what you're, appreciating people, thanking them for, who they are and what they're doing. Oftentimes we're more quick to find things that the people are not doing. But what I have found is when people die, people found all kind of wonderful things that they did to say, which is wonderful. But unfortunately, the person cannot hear that. They cannot appreciate it. Um, and that can be that can be very painful, and that can add to our grief if we know that we will not have an opportunity to to show our appreciation to that individual, whether it is through death, whether it's through divorce, whether it is through loss of job, whatever that is. Just be mindful that grief can come in various ways, and when people are lashing out, it could be that they're hurting. So any other thoughts, any other comments? Let's see. We have a few things in the chat. Let's check it out and see what it says. Oh, here it is, grief share. I would encourage you, listen, this information on grief share, go ahead and take it down because you may need to pass it on to someone else. I know of people who within the last month or so who have lost loved ones. If you're experiencing depression, call 988, not 911. 988 will be the number you want to call. And some of us have lost loved ones years ago and they're still grieving. Yeah, that's so anytime you step in fact, yeah, anytime we step into a space and place, today is one of my brother's birthday in heaven. That's what Lee wrote down. My nephew who passed away about a year ago, his birthday will be next Sabbath. And so we know that will be a time of pausing and reflecting, supporting his sons, who one's 19, I think that one's 21. So again, these are times that we have to pause and, think about what can we do to show our appreciation while people are living now. All right.
I wanted to share something.
Please.
I was thinking, and you may have mentioned it because I came on late, but one of the things I find that we do, and I'm often guilty of this, I'm trying to do better now, is when the person first loses their relative or close friend or whoever, we're there. As the days and weeks and months and years go by, we don't think about it anymore, but they always do. And people have said, well, everybody was there when it first happened, but then I was there by myself, especially if it's a spouse or something or an only child. And there was nobody. And they're just grieving by themselves. And one of the things I wish the church would do, and we as individuals would do, is try to remember to pick up the phone and say, how are you doing? I was just thinking about you. Because they're there by themselves and they're too ashamed to say they're still grieving, which you shouldn't be ashamed of. But that's how you feel, and nobody really cares. And some people just kill themselves because of that too, because the grief is so great and there's nobody to share it with. That was just a thought.
That's a great thought, Lenora. Let me tell you, because you're right. They get people flooding. In fact, they get overwhelmed with so many people, when the funeral and the services.
Exactly.
And after that's over, you don't see people coming around. They don't call. They don't anything. In fact, I would challenge all of us online today, think of one person who's lost a loved one. Whether it's been 10 years ago or a year ago or 6 months ago or a month ago, reach out to them, say, I was thinking about you, you were in my thoughts today, and let them know, you're thinking about, I thought of someone just recently, and I'm going to send them a text and just say, I'm thinking about you. Just simple as that.
Yeah.
The hurt continues year after year after year. Does not go away. It continues to stay there, Thank you so much, Lenora, for bringing that to our attention, because we do need to reach out to others even after the funeral.
And especially around holidays, celebrations, their birthday, if you knew when it was, that's one of the hardest times for most people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Any other thoughts? We're right at wrapping up here. I think we're right above our time here, but we'd love to hear any final thoughts. All right. So really just think about this from a standpoint of, to live well, you need to grieve well. To live well, you need to grieve well. And the way you grieve well is by making sure that you keep God in the equation. Surround yourself with positive support systems. Read scriptures, pray, meditate, journal, whatever that is. Just go ahead and make sure that you do those things to help you through the grieving process. And look for support groups like Grief Share. Those are very healthy environments. As Lee mentioned, she went, now she's a facilitator. Nobody can facilitate something better than someone who's gone through it. And so again, I appreciate the work that you're doing, Lee, with the Grief Share. And I would encourage us, if we do need to refer someone there, please do so, kindly do so that they can get the support and the help that they need. Any final thoughts, Emilyn? Did she get knocked off?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah. No. Just what Dr. Sankey-Battles presented, it's so very informative. It had so many different good ideas that we can take away from it. So let us try to incorporate these different ideas, these different principles, know when to, know what to say to someone. The best thing to do, as this is a biggie. The best thing to do sometimes is just to sit there and listen to them talk and just be there for them. You don't have to say a thing. Because many times we feel that we have to say something. And sometimes we say things that are just so inappropriate, and it makes the person even feel worse. So be there as a support, encourage each other. If you needed help, look for support groups around that are there to support the grieving process, and stay strong. God, He is going to be with you at all time. He promised He will never leave us or forsake us. So we need to just depend and trust in Him.
Thank you, Emilyn. So I want to let.
Yeah, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I just had a question. My brothers and my sister-in-law were trying to access the Zoom, but it said it was not accessible to the USVI this time. And they were wondering if there was a reason why that was, because they were all trying to get in.
Oh, I'm sorry that happened. I'm not sure why that happened.
I don't know why, because I wasn't, Alicia is from Trinidad and she's getting in. So I don't know. Did you send them the new link? Because we did change our link.
I sent them whatever you sent me. So hopefully it was a new link.
Lenora, if you can put your information in
the
put your information in the chat, and I can, once I upload this, they can hear it. I apologize. I would have loved to have them on today.
Yeah. So once it goes on YouTube, is it accessible to anybody on YouTube?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yes. So yeah, you can just, Emilyn usually sends them to me. So I'll send it to them. Is the link that you're going to send, or is it the same link does the same link access all the things that you've done, all the podcast, I call them podcasts, all the Zooms that you've done?
Each one is separate, but when you get there, you may see other ones as well. Each link is
so you can access them all once you get there.
All right.
Well, Dr. Sankey, I like to say it. Dr. Sankey, I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I'm going to be sure that my cousin investigate this and see why, that person wasn't able to come on.
Okay. Yeah, none of them were able to get in. My brother we said, thanks for the invitation, but we weren't able to get in. And they usually do. They're usually on.
Right.
So I don't know what happened.
Oh, they usually do. Okay.
Yeah, this is the first time.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No investigation needed. The weather probably, I have bad weather here today, too.
Oh, okay. Could be. Miss Biden, were you able to meet my brother?
No.
Oh, you don't know him, right? Gerard Emmanuel? Okay.
Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my cousin.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we're cousins. That's it. We're cousins. I told you we're cousins. Yeah.
Oh, so Lee, you